Hello and welcome back to the Eyes of Ode gaming channel, as we look at another game in the Is It Worth It review series. Do you like campy supernatural adventures? Of course you do, which is why you came to check out today's game, Strange Brigade. This one originally released in 2018, being developed and published by Rebellion Developments. So what is Strange Brigade? Well, sit back and relax as we go over what you can expect in this game, while keeping out story spoilers as much as possible, so we can answer the most important question asked in this review series. Is this one worth it for you? Let's find out. So in terms of plot, we're looking at a game that is separated into specific adventures or stories, which will take place in various zones set in 1930s Egypt, or at least a fantastical version of it. You take on the role of adventurer / treasure hunter / member of an organization formed to combat supernatural creatures, and get to choose from one of 4 different playable characters, or one of 9 if you have the DLCs, each one with their own personality and style. The game is built on a supernatural or light horror supernatural theme, but with a strong emphasis on the light if looking at it as a horror game. Everything is kept very tame, so don't worry if you're not a traditional horror fan. And the plot is delivered in a very comedic way. The horror itself comes from the aspect that you'll be facing off against supernatural monsters and undead such as mummies or skeletons. As I mentioned, the game will have you go to various zones to play through the campaign, with you and your group having a cutscene meeting on an airship base of operations to detail the coming mission. That's right, you'll be playing through the adventures potentially in a group of up to 4, but we'll get to that in game mechanics. So let's start with some similar games to put this in perspective. If you play the game as it seems to be intended, as a cooperative adventure, it really gives the Left 4 Dead vibes. A cooperative, episodic-style third-person shooter in a setting filled with supernatural enemies you'll be blasting through. If you're more like me and play games almost exclusively solo, as I do now, I would say that this game does have some classic Tomb Raider or Uncharted-style vibes. Traveling to settings with ancient ruins, delving into tombs, solving puzzles, all the kinds of things you expect from those sort of adventure games. One that I typically see compared to this one is another Rebellion game, Zombie Army 4, and there will definitely be some similarity in the combat with waves of enemies and setting off traps. Another game that I've covered previously that I was surprised had quite a bit of similarity was Deadfall Adventures. Now obviously we have some differences. Deadfall is a solo first-person shooter, and Strange Brigade is a cooperative third-person action shooter. But again, if you're playing solo, there is a lot of crossover. Settings are going to feel similar with the ancient tombs, delving into dungeons, or just the classic adventure style of environments. Blasting through supernatural entities. We've also got some puzzle solving, which often relies on shooting a thing in a sequence, or just looking at the overall really campy feel of the games. They're going to feel very similar. Strange Brigade is a third-person shooter action-adventure game. Most of the game is going to be playing out in a fairly simple shooter style. Typically, it's going to follow the pattern of explore a zone, solve some puzzles in the zone and loot as much treasure as you can find, unlock a path, move to the next zone. As you progress through this series of events, you're often going to end up in what feels like arena areas, where once you've unblocked the way and entered it, you get closed in and need to either defeat waves of enemies or a boss, or some combination of the two. The game also has many activatable traps in these areas, especially if you find yourself up against multiple waves of enemies. This strategy typically involves luring them into an area and setting off some kind of trap to thin the herd. Aside from these traps and some typical good old gunplay, you also have amulet powers which unlock special attacks needing to be charged by first defeating multiple enemies. Puzzles are usually not too difficult, mostly involving looking for certain hidden blocks in the zone, and then inputting the correct sequence of the characters seen on the blocks by shooting the switches. There are a few other puzzle types, but nothing is really too complex. It's more about exploring the area and keeping your eyes open for hidden or semi-hidden codes or passwords. Now, as I mentioned earlier, you can play these adventures out in a team of up to 4 players. Personally, I played through the entire game solo and didn't find it to be too challenging. However, apparently the game does scale based on the number of players. As usual, I tend to describe my gaming abilities as upper mediocre, so as long as you have some gaming skills, you shouldn't find the game to be too challenging. Again, although I played through this one solo, I can tell it's really made for a co-op experience, and the Left 4 Dead style cooperative adventure vibes run very strong through this one. Personally, I thought the graphics were really quite good, considering everything from environments to enemies and playable characters. The game's graphical style is mostly a realism approach, but obviously with supernatural elements. But I would say in that regard, it's not really a super high fantasy style. The environments and enemies look good, but a critique with both is that they are fairly repetitive in style throughout the game. Most levels will feel fairly interchangeable in terms of look, with a couple of notable exceptions. And for the bulk of the game, you'll be facing off against waves of the same enemy type with some special enemy types thrown in to make you change up your strategies just a little bit. What other features can we talk about in this game that set it apart from anything else? Well, the episodic nature does help to make this one feel a little bit unique. However, it will still feel very similar to the Left 4 Dead games in that way. I haven't seen this style in a ton of games though, so if you're not as familiar with that series, it might feel like a newer concept to you. There are a ton of collectibles and lootable items in the game. Personally, they all just kind of blended together for me. I didn't really feel like a particular loot item was special. It was just another thing that I was collecting from a chest or finding, but that could have just been my own experience. And for those with a more collector mindset in games, they might get more out of this. I would say that the most unique aspect is the campy style designed to come across as a 1930s serial, and the overflowing amounts of British style humor squeezed into every part of this game. Sound is done pretty well in this one. We've got some dialogue given in the intro to a level, or by the narrator throughout his own, which will have a British comedic flair to it. The weapons all have decent sound to them, and I mostly used the rifle and felt like there was some good oomph to the sound to make it feel like there was some real power behind the shots. Supernatural sounds sound, well, supernatural, but are definitely done in a more campy style rather than a more modern attempt at it. I'll play some examples of the sound here so you can decide for yourself what you think of it.
Reloading.
Success, good show. What a view! It may not be England, but it's still jolly impressive. Such agility! Back to the dirigible, but there's no time to rest. Lady Webster has another task to hand out.
So, now the worst is known. Sateki has been set free upon the world.
A terrorist, yeah?
the like of which the world has rarely seen, if the legends are to be believed.
So how do we stop her?
An excellent question, Alangu. I have experts here in London, translating everything we can find about Sateki.
I say, clap your eyes on this confounded conundrum.
So prepare for some opinions incoming. We get to the more subjective part of the review. I know that throughout there is a sprinkling of some subjectivity, as it's unavoidable when doing a game review. But I try to stay as objective as I can, just to let you know what the game is so you can decide for yourself what you think of it. If you're hoping that I'm going to give it a number rating, or something out of 10, or this many stars, or that sort of thing, then I guess I'm going to disappoint you, as I think number ratings are completely pointless and totally arbitrary. Instead, now I'll just talk about if I enjoyed it personally, and if your tastes are similar to mine, maybe you'll connect with this, maybe not. So did I enjoy the game, and do I recommend it for the first time player?
Yes.
Yeah, you know, it's okay. If you know what you're going into, you should be fine. This is an episodic run-and-gun simple puzzler game, set in a very supernatural and comedic environment. The game doesn't take itself seriously, and you shouldn't try to either. It's best enjoyed as a simple, fun shooter, rather than coming into this expecting an intense experience. I played through the game solo, so I probably have a different perspective than most, as the game is really intended for co-op. That said, I thought the solo experience was enjoyable as well. The campy or goofy style was a nice change from other games I've been playing, though I expect it won't be ideal for everyone. The episodic nature can also be a positive, as it has clearly defined beginnings and endings to each zone, and is great if you just want to sit down and play a game for about an hour or so. I recommend it for people who want a casual, lighthearted shooter with some puzzles thrown in, and don't mind some comedy in their games. If you're the ultra immersive type, this might not be exactly what you're looking for though.
Only one group of heroes can stand against the scourge of Sateki. The Strange Brigade!
So I hope you enjoyed this look at Strange Brigade. Have you already played through this one? What were your own thoughts on the game? Did you agree or disagree with my own assessment of it? If you disagreed, let me know why. Maybe there's something I didn't think of and you can convince me. I'd love to hear about your own experiences down in the comments, or if my review showcase was helpful, I'd like to know if you decided to go ahead with it or not. Either way, if you found this video interesting or entertaining, please let me know with a thumbs up, and also consider subscribing to the channel. I make and upload a variety of gaming content, not just reviews like this, but also walkthroughs, mod showcases, let's play, and more. And I'd love to have you join the community and help direct the future of the channel. Otherwise, thank you so much for taking the time to watch today, and until next time, take care.